It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Mirjam Falk. We're here in your beautiful home in Yerushalayim. And Mirjam, last time we left off when you arrived in Camp Gurs. So I think you just turned 14 when you arrived to Camp Gurs.
We came to Gurs on the 6th of May, I see, in 1941. That was just a bit before my 14th birthday, and my elder sister was 16. My younger sister was bas mitzvah in Gurs, and my younger brother was, if I was 14, then he was 9 years old with my mother, and we arrived in Gurs after my father was already liberated from Gurs, and we came to France to meet my father, but we were arrested on the border, and so we were after a few weeks taken to Gurs, and we saw there a big camp, lots of barracks. It was divided into different aisles, small aisles. Every aisle had a letter on it, ABC, and all the aisles were divided one from the other from barbed wire, and you couldn't go from one. You could go in the aisle from one barrack to the other, but you couldn't go out of your aisle to meet a person of another aisle. So it was completed. The women were on one side and the men were on the other side. So the children were put together in a children's barrack. My little brother was put together with my mother, as my father was not there. He was put in the women's department with my mother, and but there came women with us whose husbands were in the camp, and they could never meet their husband without getting a special permission for the husband to get out of the aisle, to come into get a permission to get into the aisle of the women, and there to meet, or to meet on a neutral place. Sometimes on Sundays or on special holidays, there were some festivities, and sometimes that would be a concert or something, and that was the most important thing for the families, was to reunion there, because it was so difficult for husbands and wives and children to find each other. Only if there was any festivity could they meet all together. The barracks were big barracks. There were beds in it, and a kind of sack with straw, I think, in it, and very primitive. There was no chair, no table, nothing else. There were women who had already made, or their husbands had made them some little things, some little chairs or some little things. But when we arrived, there was nothing to us. And there were, on top of the bed, there were shelves where we had to put our things. Then, when food arrived, we found out that the food was not kosher, so of course we didn't eat anything. But when we arrived in Gurs, there was a big motion, because a group of 30 people, women and children, came. So lots of people came around us, and when they heard the names, our names, of course the husbands of the women came, and all the friends of our synagogue from Antwerp came there, and they told my mother, "Don't be frightened, everything will be okay here in this camp. We have put up a kosher kitchen, we'll bring you every day a kosher meal. Your husband was staying with us in the same barrack, but your husband has been liberated, but we will take care of you, and the camp is not frightening at all." And in the evening, and my mother, who was a big optimist and saw always the beautiful things of life, in the evening went around with me in the aisle to get me to talk how I'm feeling about it. And I said, "Mother, it's horrible." And she said, "What is horrible? We don't now, we are not frightened of anything, we don't have to run away from anybody. We are in a camp, we are closed, so it's very good. We can be calm and we can sleep at night without being frightened what will happen tomorrow. And I said, but mother, we are human beings. Why are we taken into a camp? Why is there barbed wire around us? We are no bandits, nothing. We have done anything but wrong. Why are they treating us like that? It's terribly offending me, and I can't get calm with it. And my mother said, look, there is a Pyrenees. There was a beautiful, from far away, we saw the mountains, and there was a beautiful, you read it.
The sunset.
Sunset, a beautiful sunset on the mountains. Look at the beauty of the country. I said, yes, the country is beautiful, but it doesn't help me. I am closed in a barbed wire. I am not like a human, I'm not treated like a human person. And this feeling was for me very difficult. So we got used to our daily schedule. In the morning, very early, there was a big boom at the door, and then a man came. I must tell that the camp was put up for the Spanish War, and
Civil
there was
War.
Still Civil War, and there were still Spanish prisoners in the camp, and they had already taken over many of the tasks. So at 6 o'clock or something like that in the morning, would come a man, Spanish one, with a big voice, and say something like, open the door or something, and then he would bring something that smelled horribly, and that was called coffee. It was something black, it was something hot, but it smelled horribly and it had a horrible taste. And then a bit later came a Jew with bread. Now there was every day somebody came with a bread, and so all the children went around, looked around on the fingers of the man. How would he divide the bread? He would not give 1 millimeter bigger one slice than the other. So sometimes the bread was cut into 30 slices, sometimes it was cut into 20 slices, depending on how many breads there was and how many people were in the barrack. But we were very keen on it that everyone should exactly get the exact amount. I mean, it was not weight, but it was by eye. So it was dry bread and this horrible coffee. And then a bit later came very nice time. All the children had to stand in a line to get ready to go to school. We were taken to an outside of our aisle, to the aisle of the direction of the camp. In the middle of the camp, there was a direction of the camp, and there was these barracks were, I think, brown or black. They were very dark, and there was in the middle of the camp there was a white, beautiful-looking barrack, and there was a big red cross on it. And appeared at the door a very smiling, nice lady in a white nurse uniform, and she smiled at us and said, "Good morning, please do come in." And she made all the children sit. Now we were children sitting between the age of 6 to 14, 15. Some speaking French, some speaking German, some speaking Italian, different languages, different levels, of course. So first she made us sing. Then she gave us something nice to eat. There was usually a little piece of halva. There was very often a choco to drink. That was the only milk, of course, we should see in the camp. And there was, I don't remember, something else to eat. And then she was Protestant, or I think she was Protestant. She said, "Please make your prayers." We all thank God, everyone in his religion, for the food we get, and then we ate, and then the tables were cleaned. She made us thank God for the meal that we had. It was a small meal, but it was very important because the food of girls was so bad, so that gave us some more calories. And then the tables were cleaned, and then the school began. And the school was done in German, I think, because she was from German Switzerland. And the teachers were mostly of German Jews who were taken from South Germany. They were there already from 1940. When the Germans, it was in Germany, when they came to their town, they took all the Jews. I don't remember now the name of the town, but it was from South Germany. They took all the Jews directly to the camp. And there were between them, there were teachers, there was an actor, there was a violinist who brought his violin with him, and all kinds of interesting people. And there were the teachers, therefore the teaching was done usually in German. And as we were lucky, we knew German and French, we could help ourselves. Of course, the learning was very not fitting for our age, but they tried to make us interested in something. I don't know why in such a camp where people were were interned and people didn't know, some of them didn't know what was going on with the family. And there were also people who died at the camp. They made us learn the Erlkönig. It's a big poesy about the father with the son who ride by night, and the son says to his father, "There is someone who tries to get me, there is someone who tries to get me." And the father said, "But no, my son, you are dreaming, you are dreaming." And the child hears the voice of the emanation who says to him, "Come, my dear child, you are a beautiful child, come with me, come with me. I look for you, and I want you." And the father said, "But please, don't be frightened, my son, everything will be okay, we'll soon arrive home." And there is a wonderful this thing between the father and the child and the voice. It is
It's amazing that you still remember. You remember the story very well.
It's from Goethe. Goethe wrote it. It's a very known poesy, and there is a music by it. I think the music was done by Schubert. It's a very famous thing. I don't know why they made us learn this. It's a beautiful thing. I was very impressed. But finally, the father rides on his horse quicker and quicker and quicker. He sees that the child is fevering, his high fever, and this is from the delirium of his fever. He speaks with the angel who wants to take him. And when the father comes home, the child was dead.
Oi, so it ends up very sad.
Excuse me just a minute. In the poesy it goes, and then the father came and took his child, and the child was dead.
It's so sad. The ending is so sad.
And in the music also, you hear it dead. Why did they teach us that in the camp? I don't understand it.
Sure.
I was very impressed, and it's classic, and I understand these teachers who wanted to stay in their classic education to teach their children in a camp.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But anyway, I learned Erlkönig in camp, and I learned a few other things. But the main thing was it was a nice atmosphere, and in that school we forgot that we were in barbed wire, and that we were prisoners in a camp, and that we were not taken in as normal persons. And what was very important for me, I am a very aesthetic person. It was so clean there. It was so nice there. It was the tables were clean, and there was a nice table mappa.
A tablecloth.
Yes, and everything was looking, smiling at us. And then one day there was a beautiful thing for us. one day when we came to the school, a sister, I don't remember her name, who was the person who received us every morning, said, I have a big surprise for you. I got the permission to take you out on an outing. And we went out of the camp with our teachers, without any soldiers, and we went into a little forest that was nearby, and it was beautiful. I love flowers, you see everywhere flowers, and it was beautiful. It was in May. May in Europe is full of flowers, and there was my preferred flowers were there, and we could see flowers and trees and the blue sky, and we were free. There was no barbed wire, no soldier, nobody around us, only children smiling happily. Then a teacher gave us some kind of lesson, because it was Ki'ilu, it was as if it was a school day, but the teacher understood very well that nobody was listening to his teaching, and then we were free to go around for an hour or something, and everyone began to take flowers for his mother. And then happened a very, very funny thing. We came home in the afternoon, lots of children, every child quite very tired already, with flowers in his hand for his mother. And he brought flowers for his mother in the camp. That was something very special. And the camp didn't let us in because the permission had not arrived. And it was such an ironic situation, because we were out pleading to get into camp. It was absolutely a crazy thing, until the permission came around from the direction of the camp to the policeman, and so on, the usual bureaucracy, until came someone and opened the gate of the camp, and we were happily delivering our flowers to our mothers. Now the daily life was not easy. Besides the morning in the school, there was nothing to do, but the Jews were very creative. When we arrived, the camp had already existed for a year or something. There were lots of clubs. There was music club. There was a historical school. There were all kinds of things that you could learn there. And of course, not things from my age, but I went to lessons on Judaism. I went to lessons on Historia, because I didn't want to sit around doing nothing. My elder sister, who was in a youth organization, Antwerp, met immediately friends of her youth organization, and they used to sing and to dance hora and to make plans about coming to Israel. They were sure that they come to Palestine very, very soon, and they had their things. I had my time there. I don't know what my little sister did. My little brother was with my mother, and my mother, who came from a very well-to-do family, tried to find any way to make us some food. And there is a picture here. First of all, there is one picture showing the whole camp. That is these are the toilets. We were very far away from the barracks where we slept. That was one for the men and one for the women. You see a line of men standing there. It was far away. You had to get up on steps, and then you got something that was called a toilet. It was only a hole in the floor with half a door. It was not even a complete door. There was only half a door on it. And underneath were big buckets, and the poor men of the camp had, from time to time, that was their duties, had to empty the buckets. It was a very heavy task, of course, very difficult task, but that was one of the tasks that the men had to do. And these toilets caused a lot of pain to all the old people, because there were many people, of course, with diarrhea and with all kinds of disorders, and you can imagine what it means. Or even without diarrhea, a man has to go out at night 2 or 3 times a night, to go out 50, 60 meters at night when it was freezing cold. And in winter, there was from the rain stocked in the earth, and people just were stuck in mud. And every morning we were not there in the winter, but we were told that every morning you would find dead old people lying in the mud, who tried to get to the toilet. On the way to the toilet, on the way back, they just fell down in the mud. There was nobody to take them up, and they just froze at night. So many people, it was a very difficult time. And but still, I remember it. There are people who remember Gurs, I mean those who still live, as a terrible time. I remember Gurs as a very Jewish creative time, in a place where it was so difficult. The Jewish girls were nicely looking. They put rouge on their lips. They wanted to look attractive. There was, of course, no way of
to scrub,
no.
or to wash also.
No, when after you wash your things, you
iron.
To iron. There was, of course, no way to iron. What did they do? They put their things nicely under the sacks that they slept on.
That would
and in the morning, so it would look nice. So they tried to do everything so as to look aesthetically nice. All the classes that were given, the people would give concerts from time to time. As I tell you, from one side the concert was a wonderful occasion for women and men to meet in the families. On the other hand, it was a wonderful occasion for the people to play their instruments, because those from Germany came with their instruments, and they played violin, and I don't remember if there was a piano there, maybe that's a Swiss broad one, but there were concerts. There were some people who began who knew to draw, and there was even a big exhibition of beautiful drawings. I have here at home a book, the drawings of girls. Of course, some are terribly tell the desperate situation people were in, but some were very full of hope and colors, and I was full of admiration for people with, for instance, the first time I learned about Jewish history was in Gurs. I didn't understand everything, it was for grown up, and I was a little girl of 14. But all these things that people did do, then came, for instance, Chag HaShavuot. But now, I must also say that besides the people of our group of Antwerp, of our synagogue, were also people from German origin, who came from Brussels and from other parts. And it was a very nice group who had Gemara learning every day, and to make the kosher kitchen, and to organize Jewish things. And the Rav of the camp was Rav Ansbacher. People in Israel knew Rav Ansbacher, of course, Zichrono Livracha, because he was afterwards a teacher in Zeitlin, in Tel Aviv. So many of people of my age, who were then young people after the war, were the pupils of Rav Ansbacher. I myself remember especially Rav Ansbacher from Chag HaShavuot. For Shavuot, he prepared, together with the people of the committee who were organizing all the festivities, lots of seeds and all kinds, a very big, vast environment outside in the fresh air to organize a davening. There was no corona. People were not frightened to be one next to the other. But people understood that for Yom Tov, probably even people who were not religious would come and would like to pray. And there was a davening, and then before the Kriyat Torah, Rav Ansbacher spoke beautifully about Matan Torah. He spoke very beautifully. And then it was just the beginning of Kriyat Torah, and there was a big, suddenly the sky got black, completely black, and in the sky we heard noises from, I know it in French, in German, in every language, but not
thunder,
English.
Thunder,
and
lightning.
lightning. And lightning. And I thought, Ribono Shel Olam, Ze Har Sinai. It was really like Matan Torah. It was unbelievable too.
And it happened at the same moment?
Exactly at the moment that we were reading Matan Torah. Chag HaShavuot.
It was as if you were at Har
We all
Sinai.
had to run away because it was raining, it was pouring, and we took refuge somewhere, and after a few minutes it stopped, and we all came back. Years later, many, many years later, maybe my son was a little boy, so it must have been in the 60s, and that was in the 40s. So more than 20 years later, I was at a wedding, and Rav Ansbacher was to give the blessings. And I went up to Rav Ansbacher, and I said, Shalom Rav Ansbacher, you don't know me, but I know we have been together in Gurs. He said, who are you? I said, the daughter of Felix Strauss, because he wouldn't know me. But I was a kid, but he knew my father. The daughter of Felix Strauss. And I said, I want to remind you, you remember Shavuot 1941? He became white like the door.
You remembered, yeah. You couldn't forget. You couldn't forget.
He couldn't speak both. That was all. We didn't speak any word anymore, and I never saw him again.
Sure.
Yes, but that was unbelievably true, like Matan Torah we felt. Unbelievable. It was really thunder and it was not a time, we had never thunder and lightning in Gurs. Only at the moment of Kriyat HaTorah, of Chag HaShavuot. The food, as I said, was very bad, and we saw that all the people were very, very thin. And people we knew from before had all lost 10 or 20 kilo. So we lost immediately our weight also, very soon. And my mother learned from other women there to try to make some food. People would cut tins of food and make a kind of fire. And there was a canteen where they could buy some food. And my father organized many friends in France to send us parcels of food and also send money so that my mother could buy some food. And then she had to be crouched there on the floor. I don't know how she managed, and to cook something. And then with a smiling face, she gave us and said, please eat it. It was, for me, it was desperate because I felt my lady mother with her two servants at home is now sitting on the floor and trying to make from a little tin something to eat for me. But I need that food because otherwise I can't survive. It was such a terrible it was a terrible feeling for us. But my mother was wonderful. She never gave in. She always smiled. She said, never mind, we are managing, we are trying to get over it, and we'll get soon out. Then my brother, my eldest brother, was in America. And my second brother was at the time a boy of 17.
This was Martin.
Martin came in, marched in like a student, as he looked as if he was a student at university. He was altogether 17 years old, a boy. And he came to the camp, and he went in directly to the director, and he spoke to the director. He was very clever, Martin. And he said to me afterwards, I looked at this table, I looked at his office, I saw that on his table there was a terrible misorder. Everything was mixed over. And I saw a lot of letters from all over. And I spoke to him, and I found out that he doesn't know a word of English. That was very important for me. He knew only French, no German, no English, nothing. But he was the director of the camp. And I said to him, what do I need to get my mother and my sisters and my brother out of the camp? And he said, well, if you get an affidavit for America, or you have an invitation for some other country, they will be freed immediately. So what my brother did, but I heard it only 40 years later, when my mother passed away. I did never know it at the time. My brother wrote to my brother in America and said, Walter, you have to send a letter with lots of stamps, big stamps, all in English, of course, writing that you have got the permission to invite them to America, that from that you will get the affidavit. The most important thing is the envelope and the paper will be full of very important stamps. I'll make the rest. And then, after a month or two, came my brother, went to the director and said, why is my mother and my brother still in the camp? And he said, well, I told you, if you bring me an invitation. He said, but you have an invitation. He said, I got an invitation? Of course, it's probably on your table. You got a letter from America, directly. He said, I got a letter from America? Please help me to find it. And my brother saw immediately the letter, but he made as if he didn't see it, and he mixed around and so on. He said, here is the letter. And the man opened the letter and said, I tell you, I'm a bit ashamed, I don't know in the English. Can you translate it for me? You see this the letter, you see the stamp, you see that's an official letter. My brother writes an invitation to get them to America. Are you sure it's a very important letter? Are you sure? And are these real stamps? He said, of course. Do you really see? You see on one side and on the other side, you see all the stamps. The next day, my mother was called to the director and said, you get a permission to get off the camp. The next permission of people to get out of the camp will be at the date such and such. My mother looked at the calendar, it was Shabbos. My mother ran to Rav Ansbacher and said, what will I do? I get the permission to get out of the camp with my children, but it's on Shabbos. That means Mechalel Shabbos, to get out of the camp. That means to get into to get by car and so on. What should I do? And Rav Ansbacher said, I can't paskin you. I cannot say yes and I cannot say no. So my mother said, I will paskin. I brought 6 children to live, not to die. I take them out on Shabbos from the camp. And it was amazing how courageous my mother was. And when my mother told us that we were getting out of camp on Shabbos, we were sure, I was sure we would die on the way. To ride in a car on Shabbos, it means death. So the same Spaniard who took us to the camp rode like a meturaf. I don't know how
very reckless. He rode very quickly and very recklessly.
Very quick and very uncarefully.
Yeah, reckless,
we were shuttled from
reckless.
one side to the other in a big...
like a van?
Yes, in a big van. Many people. And my elder sister and me, we looked at each other and said, Shabbos. We were sure we'd have an accident, would die. We were sure. But you see, we arrived safely. We didn't believe that you could drive on a car on Shabbos and get out of the camp on Shabbos. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to my mother, she was right.
Mirjam, can I just ask, you spoke about the paintings. You did a painting in Gurs. You made a painting in Gurs.
What?
You also did a painting. And it's in the book. If you show in the book, it's at the end of the book.
Well, in school...
It's a beautiful painting that you did.
In school, we had also to make paintings.
If we can just show the painting.
I didn't remember anything from painting. But years later, my husband, who was a professor of Jewish law, was teaching in Heidelberg at the Jewish high school. And I was coming every evening. I didn't want to be in Germany, so we made an arrangement. I couldn't stand in Germany for 3 months. It was impossible for me, for my feelings. So we made an arrangement. My husband would go for 3 months to teach in Heidelberg. Once a month I would visit him, or he would visit me in Israel. So it was my turn to visit him in Heidelberg. Heidelberg is a beautiful place, but it's Germany. And I would come around the evening time when I knew that my husband was finishing his lectures to fetch him, to take him home. And I was sitting there in the office of the high school to wait for my husband to finish his lesson. And suddenly I saw something on the table of the office. It looked to be very interesting, and I saw in an exhibition the drawings of the children of Gurs. So I took it in my hand and I said, that's interesting. I didn't know that there was such a thing. And I saw that the exhibition, the pictures of the nurse so-and-so, I don't remember the name, in the book probably the name is written.
Her name was... you do mention her name. It was Kassa.
Elspeth.
Elspeth
The
Kassa.
nurse Elspeth. That's an exhibition of the paintings of the children of Gurs that belong to the nurse Elspeth, and it goes through all of Germany. And I look through the catalogue, and the third picture I see is the picture, I didn't remember the picture, but it's written under it, Mirjam Strauss, age 14, Gurs, 1941. So I said, it's me. There is no other Mirjam Strauss, 14 years old in 41 in Gurs. So I looked at the dates of the exhibition in all the surroundings of Heidelberg. It was done already a month ago. And it was far away from Heidelberg, the exhibition. So I took the name of the organization and I wrote to them that is a picture that I made. I'm a survivor of a girl, and I want to get my picture because I want to show it my children, my grandchildren. And I was told that it's a personal possession of Nurse Elspeth. I said, how can it be? It's me who has made the thing. But Schwester Elspeth did her life, gave her life for the children of Gurs, and all the things that were done in Gurs belong to her. You can't apply for it. So you can try to explain to certain men in Denmark, I think it was. So I had a big correspondence with him, and he wrote to me, you are the only surviving child who ever wrote to me. It's very interesting for me to hear of you. I don't know if the other children didn't survive or just didn't care to write, but you are the first person to write to me. And I said, I'm sure other people live also. But anyway, I said, I want my picture. He said, I'm sorry, I can't give you the original, but I will make you a photocopy, and I'll send you the photocopies. And I got photocopies.
And you have it in your book?
Yeah, I have put it in my book because
picture.
it arrived when we were finishing to print the book. It just then arrived. So my granddaughter Ayelet, who looked after all the technical sides of the book, got into the book.
It's a beautiful picture and it's very colorful.
Yes.
And it's amazing that it's just one nace after another. It's one miracle that you happen to be there, you happen to see, and you don't remember doing the painting?
Probably we did. I mean, it was the only place we got a pencil in hand or colors in hand, because in the barracks there was nothing. So we were happy to use things that we could put we were not given a pencil or a paper to take home. It was only in the school itself. So probably there was painting times. I mean, if we were children of all different ages, different languages, it's quite normal that they would give us time to paint.
It's amazing, Mirjam. And Mirjam, can I ask you, Gurs is very close to the border of Spain.
Yes.
It's really on the border of Spain.
It's a Pyrenees.
So how come nobody tried to escape to Spain? Because
how we came there?
How come no one thought of maybe crossing the border and going into Spain?
No, we never tried to get to Spain. Never.
Wow.
We tried to get out of French occupied France to non-occupied France, and there we were captured by the Germans.
But why not to Spain? Why did? Because it was
we
right
were in
on
France.
But
from Gurs we couldn't get out.
Oh, you couldn't get out. Uh-huh.
From Gurs we had to be taken out by the police. They didn't take us to another country. They took us to Marseille. To Marseille, we were not freed. We were put into something that was between being freed and between the camp. We were put in because of the letter of my brother that we had Keil, as if we had an affidavit for America. We were put in Marseille together with people who were expecting their visas for America.
It was like a transit camp,
And it is transit camp. We were taken to Marseille. It was a trip, I think, of 2 days or something. And then we were taken to a house, horrible house. It was a big house full of Jews. I think there was three levels. In every level there were big rooms. In every room there were beds. There were beds of 1 or 2 or 3 levels.
Bunk beds.
Yes. And there were men, women, and children all together in all the rooms. They didn't make partition of women alone or men alone because they made it for families. It was disgustingly dirty. There were, I think, 1 toilet on every level, and there were tens of people in every level. It was disgusting. It was smelling bad. It was dirty, and I, with my aesthetic feelings, I was disgusted. It was full of how do you call it? Little black things that come out at night when you put on light, and they pick your blood. Not lice. Lice are in the head. Lice in the head we had also, but these are
It's a type of bags, like bags.
How?
Bags.
How do you say?
Like a bag, certain types of bags.
I don't know the name of it. In German it's called Wanzen. And the hotel was called Old Hotel du Levant. I tell them that if you speak French, Hotel du Levant means hotel of the Mizrach HaTichon, Levant. But we called it Hotel de Levansen. Levansen is the kind of the thing that pick you up. It was disgustingly there was no food. You had to organize food yourself. There was a little kind of a court where you could get to fresh air, and the people were not nice. There was nothing organized, nothing nice, nothing. But I mean, we were out of camp. And in camp there was always a danger that you might be taken by train anywhere because you are captured. The moment we were out of camp, we were in a big town. This building was not closed. We didn't feel that we were closed in. We felt it was disgusting, but we were in a big town. We were kind of free. My father, who was in résidence forcée, that means he had been out of Gurs in a little place where he had to report to the police, I think, twice a week. That was also between camp and between free. And there it was a very nice place, but he asked to be put near to Marseille, so he was put in a big camp near to Marseille, where people were expecting their visa again, as if we had visa. And it took us another few weeks until we saw my father. We didn't see our father since 10th of May 40 until August or September 41.
A long time. How was your reaction when you saw your father? You must have been so excited to see your father again.
And my father, of course, was much thinner, but we were all much thinner than we were before. We were all changed. But we were happy to be together. And then the next morning, my mother was absolutely amazing. The next morning, my mother took us out to a cafe to have breakfast. And my elder sister came up and said, "Hello." I didn't get up as you now. I got up at 6 o'clock. I made a big walk. I know already all of Marseille.
Wow.
Marseille is a beautiful city. I tell you everything, where everything is in Marseille. And there were even little boys who tried to give me Marcus, but I escaped from them. And we are now in a big town. We'll get on outings every day, and we'll try to be as much outside of the house as possible. And we'll overcome the time. And my mother got, I don't know how, my father got her money, and my mother got false food ration cards, and she bought everything she could, so she made us eat. And after a few weeks, my sister suddenly remembered that in the camp before we were leaving girls, there was a social worker, a Jewish social worker, and she told my sister, who was already 16, when you come to Marseille, you go to the office of OSE. OSE is the Jewish organization for help for children. You go to that organization, and you try to get help from them. And suddenly, after a few weeks, only my sister remembered that, and she went there, and with my mother, and they immediately arranged to get permission for my mother to take us out from the hotel once, to get to a private hotel. I don't know how my father had money for it. I can't understand it. I mean, it was already 2 years that my father was not working, but he made money for it. My mother took us a room with, I think we were Fanny, Mirjam, Eva, Jacques, we were 4 children, and there were, I think, 3 beds. I had to sleep in one bed with my elder sister. My little sister had to sleep in one bed with my little brother. There was a bed for my mother. But in the beginning, my mother had no permission to stay with us overnight. She had to go back to the camp. And so finally, the organization got permission also for my mother, so as not to let us alone in the hotel. So we were already in the hotel. We had less chairs and less beds than we were people. And if father would get permission to stay overnight, then my father and my mother had also to sleep in that room with the 3 beds. But we managed. We managed. And not only that we managed, but if father was there for Shabbos and would go to shul, he found immediately a synagogue, he would always bring a guest home. So there was less chairs, less plates, forks, or whatever. Everything was missing, but there was always a good heart and a good feeling for another guest. And we could sing Friday evening, and father would eat a Divrei Torah, and it would be Shabbos. And Shabbos morning would go with father to synagogue, and it would be a nice atmosphere. It was not easy, but I understood very well. You were here in Israel in Gush Katif.
Yeah.
And they were put in hotels.
Afterwards, huh? And
they were a long time in a hotel. And I remember there were many nasty articles in papers. What do they tell it so bad? They get beautiful hotels. Why don't they be happy with it? And I wrote to everybody, I know what it means to live in a hotel. It's horrible. It's terrible. You have to be together, father, mother, children, grown-ups, small children, all together in one room. You don't have your private bathroom. You don't have your private toilet. You don't have anything private. And you don't have the privacy of your parents. You lose the personalities. You lose so many things. And they had to stay in a hotel for a very long time, the people of it. So I understood them very well. But still, we knew that we were much better off than the people who stayed in Gurs. And we began to send every week parcels for food to the people who stayed in Gurs, because we knew how hungry they are. And in Marseille, we tried again to make a nice living. My sister found a kind of work. I loved to go to school, but if I would have gone to school, I would have been obliged to go to school on Shabbos, and that of course would not come into question. So I went as an extern, learned to English only to French, take mathematics and French, so as to be together sometimes of the week with children of my age, but not to be obliged to go to Shabbaton school. Then came Rav Schneerson to Marseille. Rav Schneerson was a cousin of the big rabbi who was later the rabbi of New York.
Zalman.
And Rav Schneerson in France organized first a course of, he said we have to organize the youth, because the youth was lost, and if youth is lost and is not occupied, it begins to do very bad things, and it's very dangerous from the moral point of view and the Jewish point of view. So he began to organize a course of radiotechnique for the boys. And my brother Martin, who came to Marseille also, because that we were touring in Marseille, enrolled immediately to that course. And then he organized for the girls a course of sewing. And I went to, I don't know who was the director of that course. The course was for girls of 18 years old. And I said, Louis, I'm only 14, but I'm not occupied. I go twice a week to school, and I love to sew. And if I can sew, we are 3 girls. We can't buy anything in the shops, so I can sew our garments. We grow up all the time, and we had to make our garments grow up with us, Ershu. So they took me in. So I was the youngest girl in the school, in the course, but I learned to sew there. And I saved many of the garments. I put some sleeves in it. I don't know from where I took, put here things, and so on. I tried to manage, with the help, of course, of my teacher, to make the few dresses that we had to go on with us, because for years we couldn't buy anything new. And children, I was 14, so 12, 14, 16, that's the age we all grow. It was not easy. And that was also, being in the course of sewing helped me my whole life. I learned, I did sew because of what I learned there. I sew for my children things, and I made all kinds of things at home. But it was also very important that I would be busy during the day and not just been non-occupied. Then happened a very dangerous thing in the hotel. There was in the hotel, we had one room, and my mother tried to make my little brother and my little sister go to sleep, and I was still awake. I didn't still want to go to bed. So what I would do was I would go down to the lobby of the hotel. There was light, not good light, but there was light, and I would take the things that I had to sew for the school, or for the dresses I had to do, and take them down to the lobby and sit in the lobby and sew. And that was for me a very nice time. In the lobby, usually nobody was sitting in the lobby. And one evening I was sitting in the lobby, and at the desk was the director of the hotel. Now my mother told me before that the manager of the hotel had been a prisoner of war of the Germans in World War I, and he got a spleen, and sometimes it awakens. My mother had told me that. He was very nice with us. We never spoke German. We were very careful. Because we were told not to do anything that would remind him of Germany. So we are speaking only French and so on. But of course he knew from our papers that we were apatriden, staatenlos, that we came from Germany, so where were you born? Germany. And suddenly that evening when I was sitting there, I just heard him walk. And I have 2 angels that protect me all my life. They've protected me a few times in life, but that was the first time that I realized it. I was 14 years old, or maybe 15 already. I don't know if it was in 41 or 42. And I heard that man going up and down, and this angel told me, Mirjam, you're in danger. This going up and down is not normal. And I took all the things, I finished sewing, and without he seeing me, I put all the things together, and I got ready to get up from the chair. When I felt that he went suddenly to his room, then immediately I ran up the stairs to my mother. My mother was one stair up, and I knocked at the door, and my mother opened the door, and I said, "Quick!" And my mother looked at the and I heard the man running after me.
Oi.
And my mother saw he had in his hand, he had where you cut.
It's an axe. He had
an axe in his hand.
It's
My mother
unbelievable.
just closed the door, and the wife of the manager woke and immediately called an ambulance, and he was taken to hospital.
Oi, gas vergelig. He could have.
These are two angels that have protected me many times in life. That was the first time. I really felt I am protected from heaven.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, I felt this nervous walking. Nobody told me so. I felt that there is a big danger in life.
That's
And
incredible.
the man ran after me with an axe. Unbelievable. And it was just in time my mother closed the door, and the wife arrived and took my husband down, and an ambulance came and he was taken into a sanatorium. These are all kinds of things that happened to us by the way, little incidents.
It's incredible. It saved your life.
Incredible, yes?
It's really incredible.
Well, I said I have been to many Nisim. Then arrived in Paris. Good friend, people who became my friends until they passed away. Moshe, then they were called Paul and Selma Klein. In Israel they were called Katan, Moshe and Shulamit Katan. They are very famous. They were very famous. The eldest son is professor for carcinoma in Shari Tzedek. One daughter is a medicine doctor, one daughter-in-law is a medical doctor, one daughter is a midwife, a few sons are rabbonim. One of the daughters writes all the time books on Nashim B'Tanach, Nashim B'Gemara, Nashim B'Chachamim, a very famous family. Anyway, Shulamit, and these were children of friends of my parents. They got married a week or two before. They were very young. She was 19 and he was 20. And they immediately changed the way of life in Marseille. They immediately arranged a yeshurun that is like Ezra in Israel. He took the boys for Ezra, she took the girls for Ezra. We had every Shabbos a reunion with her, and in the middle of the week. And life was completely changed because we had something nice to do. We had on one side Rav Schneerson, on the other side Shulamit and Paul Katan, Klein, who arranged Jewish life, and these brought very light, very good things to life. And then my parents managed, I don't know again how they had the intuition to it and the money to do it, to send me to youth camp. The Ezra made a youth camp. A thing that maybe your children had gone to a camp of Bnei Akiva or Ezra or something like that. I had never been in such a thing in my life. That was the only time in my life I had been in the war, in 42 I think it was. And they sent me to the camp. It was amazing. I was together with some 10 girls of my age. Between them was Amélie Monk, who was afterwards the wife of the chief rabbi of England.
She was Elie Monk's daughter.
Yes. Elie Monk's daughter was there. The sister of Selma Katan, Ellen Feist. Many prominent girls were there. And we've completely forgot that there was a war, that we were hungry, that something was not right. We had things like in a Jews camp. we learned and we sang and we made beautiful things together. And after 10 days, it was for the big boys. My elder brother Martin was there in the first camp. The second camp was for les moyens, that means the between the elder, the younger, and the middle. And then I should have gone home, and my little sister should arrive, but instead of that came I don't know if there was a phone call or a telegram or something from my parents, don't come home. And instead of that, they sent Jackie and Eva. And after a few days, Paul Klein, who was in the Resistance in France, came and told me, you are in personal danger, you can't come home anymore, because the French people begin to take ratios in the street, so they take the Jews away, and now it's too dangerous to be in Marseille, you can't come home for the moment. So have you heard in Beit Vegan of Professor Arendt, Moshe Arendt? Did you know him?
Unknown, but I've heard of him.
Moshe Arendt was there also. And Moshe Arendt got a call that he had to leave, even not to stay there. He was in personal danger, and he had to leave immediately. And he had to go to half of France to get somewhere else, so as the people wouldn't find him. I was happy. I was together with Eva and Jackie, and the youth camp began to be a youth hostel, but it was not prepared for it. There were nothing prepared for it. It was prepared as youth camp, and winter came, and I mean, there was no real food. There was no real organization for it. The people tried to do as best as possible, but it was difficult. And I remember one of the boys was getting it to the age of bar mitzvah, and one of the madrichot was the daughter of the chief chazan of Limoges. She told him to sing his parsha.
She taught him that?
There in that youth hostel. I remember. These things that we children remember. In the middle of the war, it's impossible to believe. I got diaries. Then I began to feel already my bones. It was the first time from the food that was not for me, and I suffered from it, and I couldn't eat the things that they gave, and I didn't feel well. But anyway, and then I think we stayed there maybe September and October. Then Paul Klein came for Rosh Hashanah. He was probably sent on a secret message, because I think he left on Yom Tov by train. He was bringing messages to save people. It was all Pikur Nefesh. And he said to me, before I left Marseille, I met your father, and my father asked me to personally to give you his bracha for Rosh Hashanah. It was very moving. He blessed me and my sister and my son and my little brother. He moved. It was very, very moving. It was so typical for my father that he asked him to give us his bracha for Rosh Hashanah.
So beautiful.
And we were there Rosh Hashanah, maybe Yom Kippur, maybe Sukkot. And then the home couldn't do anymore, or we were sent back to Marseille. And when we came to Marseille, my mother said, we can't go back to the hotel, it's too dangerous. But a French family, also from the relatives of Paul Klein, they were all French Jews, took us in for the night, but they said they will take us in for a night or two, but no more, because they're frightened. And my mother and mother said, you know, tomorrow morning you go with me to the hotel, because we left the hotel without telling anything. We don't want to leave the... I know what will happen. My mother got a personal message from this organization who gave us a permit to get out of the camp. You are on the list, you will be taken this night. And my mother said, tomorrow morning you go with me to the hotel, because we left the hotel without telling anything. We don't want to leave the hotel without telling anything. My mother got a personal message from this organization who gave us a permit to get out of the camp. You are on the list, you will be taken this night. so my mother disappeared. So my mother said we didn't take anything out of the hotel. We didn't pay. We just left without giving an address. We'll go during in the middle of the day when there's nobody in the office and there's nobody around, and we'll take a few things, not to be. It won't be. They shouldn't see that we take a lot of things. It won't
be obvious.
Yeah. But just a few things that we can take, the most important things. And then happened a thing also that I can't forget. We were crossing a big street. The hotel was in a very big street. And suddenly a big van appeared. And for a second my mother and I didn't move. And then we ran away. But I feel it until today. There was this van, and for a second probably we thought, no, let it be and finish with it.
Wow.
But then we took ourselves and we ran away. But we were both standing before this van, and the van came very near to us.
Wow.
I was 15 at the time. My mother and me, we never spoke about it, but we had the same reaction. We just stood there for a second, and then we ran. We went to the hotel, we took a few things, we went out, and my father came and went to Rav Schneerson. Now, my elder sister was working with Rav Schneerson. In the beginning, had only put up this school for the boys and for the girls. But then he had wonderful ideas. He had all the time the idea of helping Jews, of Geula, and of spreading chinuch, and spreading Jewish life. He put up a big home. He took a beautiful house. I don't know how he managed to get money. He took a house on the outskirts of Marseille, a beautiful house, and he sent my sister. He asked my sister to work for him, and my sister was very enthusiastic to work for Rav Schneerson, and she became a very good friend of his daughter Hadassah. Hadassah was married to the brother, the twin brother of Rav Shlomo Karlbach. Rav Shlomo Karlbach had and Hadassah was married to him. But then at the time they were girls of 16. My sister and Hadassah were very linked together, and Rav Schneerson very much loved my sister. He said, "You are not a Yakete. Your sister is a Yakete, but you are not a Yakete at all. You are Chabadnik, that's okay." So my sister went with a friend who was a friend of us, who was later with us also on the trip to Switzerland. She went to visit homes. He gave her addresses from Jewish homes that were not religious, and to talk them over, to take the children into the home. He didn't think at the time of saving them. He thought of saving them spiritually, to give them a Jewish education. But suddenly the house was full of children, and the razzios were beginning. So many people came and said, "Please take my child also." So my father came to Rav Schneerson and said, "My daughter is working with you. Would you please take the younger sisters and the brother, because we don't know how to hide them." So Rav Schneerson took us. And my father was taken to organized, gave signs as if he was very ill. My father had a second, how do you say it in English? A sound of a heartbeat.
Irregular. It's an irregular
a heartbeat.
Yeah.
That is not a healthy heartbeat.
Irregular.
But how?
Irregular. It's not.
Yes.
It's not regular.
But this irregular heartbeat was not dangerous for his. He was born with it. He was from all. I have the same thing. It was found out when I was 20 or something.
Like a murmur. Sometimes a murmur.
Yes. But he said suddenly, my heart, and he said, there is a thing. And so he was taken out of camp just before the camp was closed down by the Germans. Don't know how my father had the inner feeling in time, and he got into a clinic. The lady of the clinic was Hasidat Umot HaOlam.
A non-Jew, but a righteous Gentile.
A Catholic woman, French Catholic woman, who was a marvelous woman. And my father made us all visit him in the clinic, and he got pills to take. He was tried to put them away in the room so that they won't find him. So he asked always his guests to take the pills outside of the house so that nobody would see that he doesn't swallow them. But then my mother had no place to hide anymore, and people were taken away from anywhere. My mother had to hide. So she decided, I'll take my risk. She went up to the lady of the clinic and said, I want to tell you the truth. My husband is not ill at all. This irregular heartbeat is something he was born with. He is here in hiding. And ask you a big favor. Please take me in also. I don't know anymore where to hide. I slept over every night somewhere else. I don't know anymore where to sleep. So the lady said, you will be immediately my uniform, and you will wear the uniform of the nurses, and you will be dealing here as a nurse. But be very careful. That same first night came two soldiers, young French soldiers, and knocked at the door. The lady of the clinic, the manager, got dressed up and went to the door and said, "Yet, what is the matter? We are sent here to take a man who is called Felix Strauss." She said, "This old sick man? What do you want to do? What do you want to do with him? We have to take him to the prison." He said, "But you know, this old man is in a terrible state, and you are young boys. He will die on the way. Why should you get in such a mess? Tell them that he died before you took him." But before she opened the door, she went to my mother and said to my mother, "Go in my room. Go into my bed." She took a terrible risk, because if these soldiers would have gone from room to room, she would have been taken away immediately. So she endangered her life to save my father. But the next morning she said to my parents, "Out of here. I can't keep you anymore.
It's too dangerous as well.
If you are on the list, it's finished." They didn't take you this night because I tried to, it succeeded to tell the young soldiers, to frighten the soldiers. They will come again this night. Then my parents had to wander around, and we didn't know, I was terribly frightened. I didn't know where my parents were. And after, I don't know how much time, the Germans decided to march into Marseille. And the night before the Germans would march into Marseille, Rav Schneerson took tickets for the train for all in the home. Meanwhile, had gone very big. It was a yeshiva for boys. It was a children's home for children. We had children from the age of 5 to the age of 15, 16, and the yeshiva boys. And there was a cook, and there were people were working with him. So it was quite a big institution already. And my father came and pleaded with Rav Schneerson and said, "Please take all of them together with you, because we don't know where to stay anymore." And Rav Schneerson said, while he was talking to my father, he was packing his books. He said, "You know, Mr. Strauss, you were a rich man. Don't you have any money?" My father said, "I have nothing here. I can't give you a penny. I don't have anything here. Otherwise, I would, of course, would be happy to pay for my children. But now I don't have." Rav Schneerson said, "If you say you have no money, I believe you," because my father was known as a big Balchosid. He was giving tzedakah all the time. And he said, "Well, if you don't have, you don't have. I don't yet have the permit to enter the place where I got a house. I don't yet have enough money for the trip, but we leave this night. During the conversation with my father, came somebody, gave him a check, exactly the amount he needed.
That's just amazing.
My father said he left the place knowing that Rav Schneerson had still no permit, but he was taking us all without. And that night, my parents took leave of us, and they told us we are in the same train, but the train was at a certain point dividing. That was the last train leaving Marseille before the Germans would enter Marseille. I think it was at 12 at night. And my parents were going to Nice, because the Italians were very friendly with Jews, and they hoped to escape maybe to Italy or to Prolofen. In Nice they were Italian soldiers, and we were going to the place where Rav Schneerson had bought, where Rav Schneerson had sold bought a horse, and then we came to that house. It was a very long trip. It was November, I think. It was very cold. We saw a big house. The windows and the doors were broken, most of it. There was no water in the house. We didn't see a real toilet nowhere. There was no chair, no table, nothing. So my sister took the children, began to dance with them until they were all singing and dancing. Nobody was cold anymore, and nobody was desperate anymore. And she was dancing with them for quite a long time. Suddenly appeared Rav Schneerson. How did he appear? Because he disappeared from us. We didn't know where he was. He came with a big van. From the van came out beds, mattresses, smichot, blankets, tables, benches, all kinds of things. Then he made boys of the yeshiva and everybody work immediately. You put it there and there and there and there. This is for the boys, this is for the family, this is for the girls, this is for the children. And then the children went immediately to bed, 2 or 3 children per bed. There was not enough for anything, but there was something. And then he bought a big, very nice chair, and he sat down in his chair, and we were all sitting on the floor around him. And he told us, I went to the commissioner, to the highest person of the district, and I said, good evening, I brought you a big group of refugees, and you have to look for them. I want for them cartes de ravitaillement, that means food cards, food tickets.
Food rationing cards.
And I want for them beds and mattresses and everything. You have refugees in your district. You have to look after them. So he gave me everything I demanded.
Amazing.
He was Tetrabat. So we were 3 girls sleeping in one bed. Of course, without linen, without anything. It was a very difficult time in the home. We were very hungry. There was very little food, because Rav Schneerson was very strict on kashrut. He didn't allow any cheese, didn't allow anything because of kashrut. So the little that could be available was not even available. We were living on a kind of green leaves. We girls, 15 years old, we were sitting every day for hours to look if there were no worms in these leaves.
Insects, yeah.
It was a terrible business, and that we had to eat that. And there was very little food. I began to be very weak, and the worst thing for me was there was no learning. There was nothing intellectual. There was nothing to. The boys were learning, but they left us, the girls. So we went 3 girls up to Rav Schneerson and said, we can't take it anymore. You have to get one of the boys to teach us. We can't live without learning anything. It's impossible. So one of the boys, who later in Israel was the director of a school of Chabad, decided to teach us, and the second one came up, and he was later a teacher in Israel, also in Chabad schools. And they were very good. They taught us, of course, we had no books, we had no copybooks, we had no pencil, nothing. But I say, when I tell children that they are happy that they can go to school, they think that I'm crazy. But they don't know what it means to be at the age of learning and not to have even a copybook, nothing. I remember I looked through all the things in this house to find something that I could learn. I found Sefer Yoshua, Targum Yiddish. I didn't know Yiddish. I didn't know Hebrew. But I tried to learn from the Hebrew and the Yiddish to learn Yoshua, so as to learn something, to read something. Then later I found a book on the history of the heads of the ladies in France, the 15th, 16th, 17th century. So I tried to learn some history through the heads.
Amazing.
Because I was so thirsty to learn something. But of course the worst thing for me was to get letters of my parents, and I always said when they wrote the letters they were alive. But how do I know if now today they are still alive? Because we didn't know anything. The parents were taken refuge at all kinds of places, and we never knew where they were. And we 4 children were together in one place. We were very lucky. I was very unhappy in that place. My sister, who was working there, was happy. My younger sister and my younger brother were not so unhappy like me. They learned something because they were children. They had some teaching, and they were not as hungry. I don't know why I was so terribly hungry. I got very, very weak, more than the others. Probably it was at the age that I just needed more food. And I remember the worst thing was my little sister, together with the sister of Selma Klein, took the rest of the plates of all the children. I was such an aesthetic, and forced me to eat it so as to keep going on.
The leftovers. Yeah.
And I remember years later, she said, "You remember? We made you eat and you were disgusted by it. Why were you such a fool? Why were you disgusted? It was wonderful, you had something to eat." That things that very difficult to understand for a normal person. Therefore, I know that I am a survivor. I did not go through the Holocaust like the people were in Auschwitz or Buchenwald, but we are survivors. Of course, we had things that happened to us that should never happen to a child, to a normal child. But still, I mean, we were very happy. I mean, I was always together with my younger brother, my younger sister. And then I can't go on for a long time. I will just tell one story more, and then my parents tried to make us try to go to Switzerland. And we should leave the home, the children's home, and take the bus to the next train station, and then come to Lyon. But when we came to the bus station, all the places in the bus were taken by the goyim who were shopping for Christmas night. So we had to wander back a few kilometers to the home and go in the middle of it, later at night or in the morning early, I don't remember, when there was a next bus. And then there were seats for us. And we arrived by another train to Lyon. So we didn't know where we would meet Mother. We had no idea where we would meet. We just went to Lyon without knowing where. We knew we had to go to Lyon, but we didn't know where. And again, listen, suddenly my Jackie said, "Mutti!" And Mother was on the other side of the street. How? And we said, "Shh, Mutti is German." And we ran over to Mother. And Mother told us we have to stay that night in a convent. And we said no. And his mother said, but we didn't find any place to hide you. And you have to stay overnight in a convent. And tomorrow we'll go on a trip to try to escape to Switzerland. And we said, we are not going to a convent. We come from Chabad. We are Jewish Orthodox people. We are not going to a convent. What happen will happen, what happened. But we are not going to a Goyish place. And my mother was very proud of us.
That's amazing.
And she managed to get some Jewish French family to get us overnight. And the next day, went in the afternoon, my mother said, try to dress as many things you can, one on top of the other, because you can't take only a little rucksack on your shoulder, but try to get as many clothes that you can put on yourself. And we went to a cinema to sit in the dark. And we're sitting in a dark cinema, so as not to be outside in the street. And in the middle of the cinema, we left at a certain time. We left and we had to go to the train station, and there we met the passeur, the man who would take us. And I don't remember exactly the things, but we had to go alone to Annemasse, to a city in France near the Swiss border. And there we should meet our passeur, the man that would take us over. And when we arrived in the morning in the city, my father was very well looking. He looked like an officer, something very. People would always bow down to my father. He was looking such special man. And the police who stood there at the train station said, "Where are you going?" We said, "To a wedding of family so and so, of a Goyish family." And I mean, in that time there were nearly no weddings and no people, and it was a strange thing, a man and a wife and 4 children coming there. And we went to a cafe, and then we went to another cafe, and we waited for the man who would take us to across the border. And suddenly we saw that the man was arrested by the police. And we were devastated. And my father said, if he's arrested, he can't take us to the border. What will happen to us? And the whole day we were going from one cafe to the other to try to wait, to hope that the man would get out of the police and would help us to cross the border. We had given him a lot of money. My father had given him. And we felt that the place was full of German soldiers and of French soldiers, and we were nearly the only civilians going from one cafe to the other. And I felt, I don't know until today if I imagined or if it was, I felt all the time an old little woman going behind me. And I feel it until today. She's right here, behind my back. And she was going behind me. I have no idea if it was an imagination of me. It can very well an imagination, because my sister didn't remember such a thing. And when it became later, so my father said, we must find a solution where to stay overnight, because if we are in the street, we will be arrested. So we went to a hotel, we saw a certain hotel, and my father said, take all your courage to my mother and try to plead with her to get a room for the night. And my mother went to the hotel, to the lady, and said, can my husband and me and 4 children have a room for this night? And she said, you are certainly here for something completely different. Go away immediately. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the soldiers go from room to room and arrest everybody who is here in my hotel. You have in 5 minutes, there is the last train going to Marseille. Leave me and run to the train station. My mother nearly cried. We ran to the train station, and we saw that the same soldiers who were there in the morning, whom we told that we are going to a wedding, are looking through the papers. And we knew they could not ignore my father. He made such an impression on them. If they see us, they will arrest us. But without meeting the soldiers, we couldn't go onto the train. My mother bought the tickets, trembling. And she came there with the tickets, and we were standing there, and we didn't know what to do. And then happened another mess. All the soldiers and the people who looked for papers and for something disappeared for a minute.
Incredible.
Did they all go to the toilet to the same minute? They disappeared. They just disappeared. We went into the train. That's another mess. There's no answer for it. But they just disappeared for a minute and we could enter the train. Then again, it was another story in Marseille how we went on again. But
can I just mention with this story, your brother years later went back to find the person, the smuggler, the Jewish smuggler who was going to take you over the border.
Yes, after.
And
I can't anymore.
No. but Mirjam, he said that he did it for the money, and
I have to finish now.
Okay, Mirjam, thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow, Mirjam, that was unbelievable. The miracles that you went through, the miracles.
So many
it's
nisim.
Unbelievable.
So you see how much we have to be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Thank you so much, Mirjam.
Okay.